All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Angelo Carlos podcast. I'm here with my lovely guest, Tiffany. She has a ton of industry experience at Amazon as well as at Salesforce, and she's my classmate at UCLA. I've been so excited to interview her and show you guys her journey that she's kind of created this beautiful life for herself. So, Tiffany, welcome to the Angelo Carlos podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the very lovely intro.
Of course. I know I've been, for those of you curious, I've been dying to interview Tiffany. She's probably one of the smartest people I know at UCLA. A lot of it tech experience. So she's going to give you a lot of insight with like working in tech, as well as she's one of probably the best leaders I've met at UCLA Anderson with regards to her dedication to the class, how she kind of embodies UCLA and growth as her personality. And I feel like you guys are going to learn so much from this podcast. So Tiffany, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
We're just going to kind of course. We're just going to try and jump in right now to like our first question regarding kind of who you are. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself? Where are you from? Where'd you go to undergrad? And then what you major in?
Yeah, sounds good. So I grew up in Irvine, California, in Orange County. So, SoCal girl through and through. I wanted to get out of SoCal, so I went to UC Davis. That's actually how Angelo and I connected. He didn't go to Davis, but I remember it was probably like LF, like our orientation week when we like talked about Davis and we are talking about like how you were always there. So, yes, I went to UC Davis, studied managerial economics. So not a technical degree at all. Had no idea I wanted to go into tech. Honestly, just joined a business fraternity. That's kind of like how I made my way into the business world. Was kind of influenced by like all my friends there to like look at finance and accounting. I did a couple of internships in college at like Barclays Investment Bank, at Deloitte, and then I realized that I just absolutely hated finance. I think it's for a lot of people, it just wasn't for me in terms of like my strengths and skill sets. But going into my senior year, I interviewed with Accenture. So I made my way into consulting. That's like the job that you go into when you have no idea what you want to do. So that was kind of perfect for me. Gave me a lot of like options and opportunity. And when I was at Accenture, I was on a few clients. I got to work on some really cool projects, like working with State of California. I worked with a couple of banks as well. And then that's where I kind of fell into like the tech world. So I was introduced to Salesforce through Accenture. I was on a project implementing Salesforce. And I thought that was like, as someone who's never like coded before or basically I took a CS class in undergrad and dropped it in like 2 weeks. So not a super technical background, but just when I was introduced to Salesforce, just seeing how cool it was to be able to actually build applications with like no code, be able to like actually like affect business processes and make companies like run more efficiently. That's how I kind of fell into tech and then the Salesforce world. And then from Accenture, I was reached out to on LinkedIn by someone at Salesforce to explore the world of pre-sales consulting. So never wanted to do sales, but was super excited at the opportunity to work at Salesforce. So I took that opportunity and I spent the last 4 years at Salesforce in the pre-sales consulting role. So happy to go into that later. It's such a complex role and I feel like there's a lot of nuances. But yeah, I did 4 years at Salesforce. During the beginning of Salesforce, I started exploring business school, wanted to pivot into something that's a little bit more scalable. So like instead of working directly with customers, I wanted to work one-to-many. So I wanted to explore product management or product marketing. And that's why I went to get my MBA at UCLA Anderson. So that brings me to here today. So I did a lot at Anderson, which I'm more than happy to get into a little bit later. One of those is doing an internship at Amazon, where I interned in the Alexa AI team, working on generative AI, question and answer team. So was able to really work on some cutting edge generative AI technology. And I'm hoping to dive into the world of like AI product management when I graduate in 6 months.
Yeah, that's awesome, Tiff. So much great experience there. I know we did connect close to in your UC Davis kind of experience. You being a man econ major, going the fraternity route. Were you in a Alpha Kappa Psi? Is that the business one were in? AKA Psi?
No, I was
Or-
in DSP.
Oh, they're
The other one.
the other one. They're green, right? Does the
They
green
actually
letters?
don't exist anymore.
Oh, no
At
way.
Davis. But yeah, I was in DSP.
Oh, that is so cool. So it's so funny because I remember, and we're gonna kind of touch about your undergrad experience, then we're gonna whip our way to Salesforce, then grad school, then some Amazon experience, so that we kind of get kind of like your whole perspective. So I do remember a lot of people from Davis, like the big internship was the Merrill Lynch internship, and then people working at State Street. But you kind of went in different route with Barclays, right? And what was that like? What was your internships like? Kind of for those of our viewers who are kind of business majors in business side of things, what was it like interning at a big bank in the business side of things?
Yeah, and I did that Merrill Lynch internship.
Oh,
I
you
did
did
it.
the Merrill Lynch one.
Yeah, I did. It's like the Davis internship.
That is the day. Shit.
Which it was a good first internship experience. That was like private wealth management, which was not my cup of tea. But yeah, so as a manager economics major at 16. So at that time, I feel like tech wasn't really like a thing yet,
Oh, no,
unless you
yeah.
were like a hardcore computer science major. So if you're a business, it was pretty much like, do you want to go into Big Four, like accounting, or do you want to go into finance? And then after Merrill Lynch, I was like, I feel like there's probably some more exciting like finance things out there. So I kind of just shot my shot at like applying to different banks, to different like finance analyst roles. And
Mm-hmm.
I landed at Barclays, spent the summer in New York in like 2015.
Oh, wow.
Super cool. I was not front office investment banking, so my experience wasn't necessarily around that. I was like middle office, like financial analyst. Part of it was actually pretty exciting. Like I was doing like traditional like FP&A stuff, so financial planning analysis, like in middle office. So I was taking a look at like how the bank was running, like the expenses, like where things could be cut. But it wasn't as exciting as like actually working on some like the transactions and deals that like front office investment bankers work on.
That's so interesting. Yeah. That's kind of cool how you got both sides of experience where you were working in Merrill Lynch, you got the private wealth management, and then you made the transition to Barclays. Most people kind of, they're always starting out for that finance internship, and you were actually able to land it. So a lot of props to you there. You mentioned also to kind of during your time at Davis, you were a non-STEM major, right? So heavily on the side of things, and then you got a role at Accenture as Salesforce as your client. The fascinating thing about Salesforce is we've actually had Ryan come on board. He's an Accenture consultant as well. One of the smartest people I know, just very eloquent and very good with the developer overseas type of work, having them develop applications for certain clients. And I was mentioning in my interview with, or my podcast with Ryan, similar thing at Google, where I was managing a team of about 20 or so Accenture folks in the Philippines and the US to help build out cloud's infrastructure for like our approval system, right? So can you talk about what it was like as a working at Accenture as a consultant, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, and that was a great experience. It was like an amazing first job out of undergrad. So when you do like the consulting route out of undergrad, you're put into like a program. They called it like the consulting analyst program, and you're basically told like, hey, go explore different projects, different industries. And then when you get promoted to the consultant level, which is like 2 levels above, usually 2 to 3 years, that's when you specialize. So from that aspect, it was really cool. Like coming from someone who had no consulting experience, Accenture is obviously like a very tech consulting heavy company. So for those of you who don't know what that means, like a lot of Accenture's work is rolling out like large scale digital transformation. So helping a lot of clients build out new like cloud infrastructure, build out new CRM systems or ERP systems, and basically all these systems that help these companies like run their business. So having that flexibility of like not aligning to a certain industry from the get-go was really cool to do a lot of exploration. And a lot of what you were talking about, what you interviewed Ryan about in terms of like speaking the language to developers. Like I was never technical But the roles I was always in never required me to be technical. So I was always like a business analyst, like working with the client to understand their requirements, to understand like their priorities, to understand how their business ran. And then I would basically be like the middleman to communicate what the vision was with the developers, both onshore and offshore, like overseas. But in that, like, I guess in that growth in that role, like I grew into like a work stream leader. So like I had my own work stream, like had management experience as well. In that experience, like I started realizing how much like even though my management was like, you don't need to go like learn Salesforce or get the certifications, I was like, I want to be more effective. And I feel like to be more effective, you have to actually learn how the technology runs, like not necessarily how to code, but you have to understand like what the developers are thinking in terms of like trade-offs. So I went and got like a few of my Salesforce certifications. But yeah, Accenture was basically like my first taste into like the tech world.
That's awesome. And Tiff kind of mentioned something really important there, is that if you do kind of pursue a life in consulting or role in consulting, you're going to be put on clients like Chevron, like Salesforce, like Google, many different clients, right? And the best consultants I've ever worked with were really familiar with how the technology work, and they're really familiar with the ins and outs of their client's business. So Tiffany, she actually put the work in, got the certificates for Salesforce, and then when she went to work with the client, she was able to really speak their language and really maneuver around the technology. Even if she didn't have a technical experience or background, she made her priority and responsibility to really learn everything she could and present herself as someone who is more technical and averse with learning certain technologies. So one thing too, Tiff, you mentioned how you transferred from working with the client to actually becoming a member of Salesforce, right? I've seen that happen a ton at Google, as well as other friends who've worked in consulting. How did you make that switch from consultant to actually working for your client at Salesforce?
Yeah. I want to clarify, Salesforce actually wasn't my client. I know people who worked on the Salesforce like account. I worked on like a banking client where they were implementing Salesforce. So that was like my introduction to what Salesforce was.
Even better.
Yeah, so it was cool, like actually like learning the technology itself, replacing like outdated bank systems. But my transition from from consulting to industry, so out of consulting into Salesforce, was a pretty like, it was both like straightforward in that like I went to Salesforce and I had experience in Salesforce, so that was kind of straightforward. But also I had no idea what that post consulting role is going to look like. Like a lot of my friends were going into like strategy or operations role, and then one random like day on LinkedIn, I had a Salesforce recruiter hit me up, and then she was like, "Do you want to interview for a solution engineer role?" Never heard about that before. I almost like declined it. I was like, I can't code. Like that's not going to be a good job for me. And then she was like, "Oh no, it's actually like no coding is like required in this role. It's a pre-sales role." And then I was like, I don't want to be in sales. Like I don't like, you think of like car salesman and like that's just like not the life I like really imagine. But I was like, I was getting a little burnt out from consulting, and I was very open to having conversations. And then I went through the interview process was like pretty rigorous. Like I talked to 7 different people. Like I had 7 different like interviews before going into a final panel round. But after like I went through the process, I just like fell in love with how much the pre-sales consulting role. So for those of you who've never heard of solution engineering, it's also called sales engineering, pre-sales consultant, sometimes systems engineering. This role is like the perfect blend of technology, business, and customers and sales. It kind of like wraps all of that up into one. And the purpose of the role itself is you're basically painting the vision of how this technology can solve your customers' problems to try to get them to sign the check to buy the licenses. But you don't have to actually deal with any of the implementation work. That's where like an Accenture or like a consulting company comes in. So that's how I made the transition from consulting to Salesforce. Like I had similar skill sets in understanding like the client role, like what client services means, how to like understand requirements and like paint a vision. But it still took a lot to like really understand like the selling motion. And that's one part that I thought I would hate, but I've like really fallen in love with like being part of like a pre-sales team.
That's awesome. So can you kind of talk about what it's like? What was it like working at Salesforce? How did you adapt to the culture at Salesforce? And then how did you excel in the role? I know something at Salesforce, it's about the Ohana. I think Mark Benioff was the founder, correct? So a huge kind of influential tech figure in the Bay Area and now worldwide. So what was it like working at Salesforce? How did you excel there?
Yeah, I loved it. And also on that Ohana note, I don't know if I told you, Angelo, but I actually went to Hawaii, like with
Oh,
Salesforce. Yeah.
no way. Tell me about that.
I made President's Club, like basically their version of President's Club
Yeah.
in 2021.
Winner, you're giving me goosebumps. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like my biggest accomplishment at Salesforce. And yeah, I went in 2022. It was for my performance in 2021. And it was, thank you. It was so cool. Like I got to bring Richie, my boyfriend, fully expensed, like 3 or 4 day trip. Katy Perry came and performed just for us, like live performance. Yeah, it was amazing. There's like gifts on like when you went back to your hotel, like every single night.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
super, super cool experience.
Where'd you guys stay in Hawaii?
I think it was in Big Island. Can't remember what the resort was called, but it was like a super, super nice resort.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah,
You deserve it.
Thank you. Yeah, that was super cool. And usually it's like 90% salespeople. So like as a pre-sales engineer going, it was such an honor.
They all have a good time, yeah.
Yeah. But your question was around sorry, I just
yeah.
Can you repeat that question?
Of course, yeah. How did you excel at Salesforce? And it's kind of even more evident now that you were in the President's Club. Like, what did you do to make sure you had great performance reviews, you're highly regarded amongst your peers, and all anything of that nature? What did you do to make sure you excelled at that role?
Yeah. So one thing I loved about the Salesforce culture was that like when I started in end of 2019, so I basically started right before the pandemic. I felt like there was such a culture, even remotely, to give feedback and like it was a safe space to basically like solicit feedback, apply to feedback in real time and get a lot of like at bats to become like a really high performer. So I started in the SMB, so like small, medium business space as a solution engineer. So what that means is like I was aligned to like 8 to 10 like account executives, and each of them had like 30 accounts. So if you do the math, that's a lot of accounts to like talk to. So my days were like, I don't know, I would have like 20 calls on my calendar a week, probably more. Yeah. And these are like customer calls, not counting like internal syncs and everything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. And it's talking to like, it was a super cool job though. It was like talking to the coolest startups, mom and pop shops, and just like learning how their business runs, especially during COVID when things are changing a ton. And a lot of customers had to pivot, right? Like a lot of them would be doing something. Like I had one customer in particular that like they were selling like adult toys and like lubricants that they had to pivot to like producing like hand sanitizer. So it was such a cool and interesting time to actually be a part of like selling Salesforce to them and painting the vision. But that's part of how I succeeded, right? Like I just had so many at bats. It was such a great culture of like we have like a 3-month ramp, right? Like you literally have to like do what we call peer certifications, where you go through like 7 panels where you mock role play, like what a customer call is like, and you get feedback. And then sometimes you pass, sometimes you don't, and you have to redo it. So there's a lot of that. And then, yeah, it was just like, it was such a great experience. Like I originally started working with 10 account executives, but throughout my 4 years, I've probably worked with over 50 account executives at this point, probably more. So just like learning how to work with different personalities. There's so much like stakeholder management. Like when you're in pre-sales, your account executive, your salesperson who is carrying a quota, they are responsible for selling licenses. They're your stakeholder, but the customer is also your stakeholder. And then like within Salesforce, there's like 80 products or more. So you have specialists that you need to bring in as well. So they're your stakeholders. So a lot of it's just like applying some of the skills I learned in consulting in terms of stakeholder management, figuring out like what's important, what needs to be prioritized to make sure we all like are aligned with like meeting the same goals.
That's awesome. So it seems like you actually did a lot at Salesforce and you're able to learn about your clients as well as kind of develop your career and excel. So that's huge, especially for people who are very interested in working at a company like Salesforce. Also for our viewers who are kind of interested on how to really excel at work, especially from your experiences that you've shared with us. I want to kind of go in now with UCLA Anderson. So Tiffany and I met at UCLA Anderson, and I always admired her ability to lead people, to kind of be a huge advocate for the UCLA community. I call her in my head, she's Miss UCLA for me, just because she's such a big factor for the MBA program as well as the UCLA Anderson University. I want to ask you, so why did you apply to UCLA Anderson? And then can we talk about your award, your John Wooden Leadership Fellowship Award? Because we got to give you your flowers, Tip. That's an amazing award. But why don't we talk about why you applied to UCLA?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with like why MBA and then I'll go into the why UCLA Anderson. So I always knew I wanted to get an MBA, like back in undergrad, just being in the business fraternity. Like that was kind of just the thing to do, right? I didn't really know my why. I just knew like I will probably get bored with whatever I'm doing at work and how like I will want to like pivot careers. So that was always in the back of my mind, especially in consulting. Like pretty much all of my coworkers went and got their MBA. So the plan was always to do 4 years at Accenture or somewhere else, and then do a 2-year like full-time MBA. But when I started at Salesforce, that was right before the pandemic. And I honestly, when I was in consulting, I kind of just forgot about the MBA dreams because I didn't have time to study for a GMAT. And the GMAT, for folks who don't know what that is, that's like the admissions exam. You had to take like this exam, score like hopefully a high score, and that factors into the admissions process for the MBA. So when the pandemic hit, I was a few months into Salesforce, and I mean, there's nothing else to do, right? I was like sitting at home, like, what's next? So I was like, oh, I think it's a good time to take the GMAT because I know I've been kind of holding off on it. And I also, at that point, decided I think a part-time program makes sense because I loved what I was doing at Salesforce. I knew it wasn't a forever job. I knew I had goals beyond that, but I just wasn't ready to leave like in a few months or in a year. Like I knew I had more to learn and more to gain that would help me for my future career goals. So I studied for the GMAT, and I looked at part-time MBA programs. And what was really important to me was a few things: that the part-time MBA program could function like a full-time program because I knew I was going to want to be super involved. And second, that it had a pipeline into internship opportunities. Not that many part-time programs actually allow not that many MBA programs let their part-time folks recruit for internships. And UCLA was one of the very few. So when it came down to it, I only applied to UC Berkeley, Haas, and UCLA Anderson.
Oh, wow.
I actually was super, I don't know if I've told you this before. Haas was my dream school. Berkeley Haas was my dream
school. You never told me this.
Yeah. I told everyone at work, like my manager, when he was writing my letters of rec, I was like, Berkeley is my dream program. Like everyone, I told everyone, I was like, I'm going to move to San Francisco, transfer to that team so that I can go to Berkeley. And
Tiffany in the Bay.
I was so gung-ho Berkeley.
Yeah.
And then I only applied to UCLA originally because I was like, oh, why not? It's another like application where I could just copy my essays over. That was literally my mindset. And then when it came down to it, I was like, why not just go to like one of those admission sessions, because everything was online. I went to both programs, and Berkeley's sessions were fine. Like they were informative. And then I joined the UCLA Anderson admission sessions hosted by Dylan Stafford. And you've met Dylan before, right?
Yeah, he was a professor actually last quarter. He always made sure I was doing fine and like comforted me whenever I was sick. He was a great guy.
Yeah, no, Dylan's amazing. And his energy just drew me in. Like he brought some additional like students on the call, and I was just so incredibly inspired by everyone's story, not just their individual accomplishments, but like how dedicated they were to just helping like those around them. And
Yeah.
personally, like I think Haas is a great school. I know a lot of great people that like went there. I just didn't get the same vibes. And like I don't know if you know like Jonathan Bowie. He's a year
He was great. He was my advisor for yeah,
oh,
for
right.
Gap. Yeah. I don't know if he's like, Jay, we're gonna hang out later. He's like, yeah, man, let me know. But he was he did so good in Gap, I think, that they asked him to come back.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, shout out Jonathan. I still haven't touched him back because we're supposed to meet up, but
Nice Makai.
I will. But yeah, he was actually the first Anderson student I met. And the first time, like I met him through one of those like online Zoom events, and then I messaged him on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, can we chat? And I expected him to give me like 15-30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was blown away when he spent like 2.5 hours with me, like someone he's like never met before. And he was like after that session, like I was like texting him throughout the whole process. Like after I got in, he was like, I need to treat you to a cup of coffee. And throughout, he was amazing. All throughout the 3 years, like I shared a story at like every single like prospective student event. I'm like, just like, not he was the reason I applied necessarily, but the fact that like, hey, we're like, I'm still friends with him. He's still texting me every time he sees like a promotion of mine or like accomplishment. Like he is like on top of like congratulating me and always gassing me up. And like, I feel like
awesome.
Anderson is that. And that like just all the interactions I had with like people, I just knew I was like at home, like as cheesy as that sounds, like when I got into Anderson. And like when I got in, I was like, it's my goal to kind of recreate this community, because like I feel like I've gotten so much out of it. I feel this big need to just like give back and make sure that anyone who comes to this school gets that like same experience that like I've gotten over the last 2.5 years.
That's beautiful. And you do that. Whenever like I see you, there'll be like a few months that's like 3-4 months, right? And I see you and you're always so kind, welcoming, and friendly that it doesn't feel like months have passed by. So you aim to accomplish that, and you did it for me and so many other people. So
Thank you.
From our heart, we appreciate that too.
That's super sweet.
Of course. And I know we mentioned the John Wooden Award. We always like to give you your flowers because that is a testament of how hard you worked, how much time you put into the program, and your peers just giving you the respect and flowers that you deserve. So I was wondering if you could talk about that, what it took to kind of achieve that award, and what did you get from it?
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with John Wooden, he was a legendary basketball coach at UCLA. And UCLA Anderson every year honors like one CEO who really demonstrates like his leadership qualities, and 4 Anderson students across their 7 programs who demonstrate his leadership qualities. So a lot of the leadership qualities, it's not anything like mind-boggling, but it is quite amazing, like what John Wooden kind of demonstrated. So a lot of his leadership qualities are like striving to be like always better, like making sure you're better for not only yourself but your team, like just really amazing leadership qualities that have made like UCLA. It's more than just Anderson, but Anderson specifically has this fellowship. So this fellowship awarded to 4 Anderson students a year is actually a $35,000 fellowship, which is, it's especially for an MBA student, it's a lot of money. So it's actually a self-nominated process. And last year I remember I was like, I don't think I'm going to apply. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, just to give people context, like who actually wins this, like it's people who are like the highest ranks in the military, like incredible leaders, people who have like almost solved world hunger. Like, but it's like truly incredible people that get, it's really incredible people. And in my mind, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm, for those of you, I don't think I've mentioned yet, but for those of you who are listening, like I am the fully employed MBA program, like class president. So like I'm very involved on campus. And I feel like a lot of my accomplishments are like here and there, right? Like I've done a lot on the UCLA campus. Like I've done a lot in the Salesforce community as well. Like that I actually asked my old manager for a letter of recommendation. And when I read it, I almost teared up. He was like
Aw.
hyping me up so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, my leadership mentality has always been I just want to make like the spaces I'm in, especially like work and school. Like we spend so much time there. Like I just want to make this like a better place for everyone. Like I want to make it a better experience for everyone, and I want to empower like the people around me to like do the same. Originally to me, I was like I don't think my story is really like that impressive or incredible, but I remember talking to some people. They're like, just do it. So I wrote it was like a 500-word essay. It was a letter of recommendation. I mentioned earlier, my old manager wrote me that letter of recommendation. And yeah, next month I've already gotten like the $35,000 fellowship applied to.
Congratulations.
My tuition. Thank you. And next month I get to celebrate. The Delta CEO is actually our CEO free this year.
Yeah.
And we're celebrating this like fancy like Beverly Hills
Oh my
hotel
gosh.
next month. So it's
Have fun.
thank you.
Oh man, you gotta keep me updated on how that goes. I'll definitely be checking
Yeah,
Instagram. I was like, oh man,
I will send you pictures. Yeah.
Yes, please. Oh, well, congratulations. You
Thank
definitely
you.
deserve your flowers. I think it's a testament of all your hard work you've done with UCLA. Your manager from Salesforce also kind of put a great word for you because he's seen how hard you worked and he's seen how much you deserved it. So I'm very excited to see how much you're going to continue to grow throughout this process in your career. You've made amazing steps so far, and this is only like the beginning. So I can't wait for maybe 10, 20 years down the road, we talk again and just see all the amazing things you've accomplished, Tiff. Super proud of you.
Appreciate
And
that.
you deserve these flowers. I get a little congratulations.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. So I want to kind of like transition now to our last kind of segment. I want to talk about Amazon. You mentioned you're heavily focused on AI right now, and AI is such a huge topic right now with ChatGPT, with Bard. I remember at Google getting a code red email from Sundar saying, all hands on deck, you're focusing on AI. And basically fast forward a few months now, the whole world is focusing on AI. Can you talk about this internship you did at Amazon, what's like working there, and then what are your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
I know it's so big, but one step at a time.
Yeah, I'll talk about my internship first. So I interned this summer as a senior product manager, technical intern at Amazon. I was specifically on the Alexa AI web-based question and answer team. So to break that down, if any of you have like an Alexa or like a Google Home device, any sort of question like knowledge seeking question. So not just a basic like what's the weather. So I was really trying to put myself into customer shoes of like what's the best customer experience working on that.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. And then for for our viewers who are kind of curious, how can they apply to internships like this? We have a lot of viewers who are kind of an undergrad or in business school right now. Any advice or tips on how to get a start off internship like at a place like Amazon?
Yeah, so I think Amazon, it's probably different for undergrad versus MBA. For MBA, I'm sure it's similar with undergrad though, but like there's a specific pipeline into these types of roles. So it's done by working with Amazon student programs. And they post these internships. They have a very, very structured internship recruiting process. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Amazon, they have like 16 leadership principles. And I know every company has like their own values, but Amazon specifically are like the way they work completely revolves around these leadership principles. So some of them are like customer obsession, dive deep, like bias for action. So like making sure you like move quickly, like speed matters in business. And when you go through the interview process, at least this is my experience, I interviewed for a technical product manager role as someone who's never coded before. And instead of getting questions that are like how do you code this, or like how would you solution this like architecture diagram, like the whole interview was behavioral questions.
Oh, so
That
interesting.
Yeah, that were centered around their leadership principles.
Wow.
So, um, yeah, like basically all my whole interview process, I didn't have to talk about any like technical aspect necessarily. I just had to really prepare to showcase like how I was like Amazon worthy by answering these questions and showcasing how I've displayed these leadership principles.
That's pretty cool. That's so fascinating because most product manager interviews, they can be highly technical where you're actually coding out a solution, looking at system architecture. However, Amazon's so fascinating where you're going with the leadership principles and it was entirely behavioral. Where they allow star questions, so kind of situation, task, action, result.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very like results oriented. So like whenever you go through like Amazon interview prep, like you have to make sure your stories have like a lot of answers to showcase like the scope of work that you've worked on.
That's pretty cool. And for those of you curious, right, Tiff did so well during that internship that she was able to get a return offer from Amazon. And that's usually the goal of most internships. You want to excel so much with the team that they're saying, hey, Tiffany, hey, whoever you are, we love you so much. We want to give you a return offer. So can you talk about what you did to actually get that return offer? How did you succeed in that role basically during your time interning there?
Yeah. And I will caveat it is a weird year. I got the yes to return. Haven't gotten the official offer yet because of
It's
headcount,
coming.
but
I believe.
it's coming. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Um. Oh my gosh, this was like the toughest 12 weeks of my professional career in such a good way.
Yeah, so much.
So in terms of like how I succeeded during the internship, I'll preface by like setting a stage that like I absolutely love my time at Amazon. It was like, I remember texting a friend. I was like, I feel like I've never really been in a room where I feel like I'm like the dumbest person there. Like I usually feel like I belong in this room, but I remember the summer I really felt like I don't belong in this room, but I never want to leave. Like that's the feeling I got interning at Amazon. In terms of how I like succeeded there, like Amazon was, or specifically like my role, but I feel like across Amazon in general, I've noticed it's a very like entrepreneurial vibe, which is kind of weird to think about because Amazon's such a large company. But I was basically given a project, and then within like the 12 weeks, it was like go and figure out like I had to write a 6-page document at the end of my project. Amazon's a writing culture, so it was basically like drafting like a press release that suggested my 3 features and story told my 3 features I was coming up with, and then coming up with like 5 pages of internal, external, like stakeholder FAQ.
Wow.
So yeah, not much direction though. It's kind of like here, go figure it out. I think why I really succeeded is I've always been like kind of a go-getter. Like I basically took the 12 weeks, and every week I had like a one-on-one with my manager. I made sure that I came to every single one-on-one with exactly what I wanted to go through. Like literally the feedback I got from my manager in week 4 was like, how's this week 4? I thought she thought I was basically done with the internship at that point. But it was a lot of sleepless nights. It was a lot of like, just like, I would really showcase like me demonstrating the Amazon leadership principles. I would show like customer obsession. Like I would put myself into customer shoes. I literally went and bought the competitor. I like bought a Google Home. I like bought it for my internship, and I would put it next to my Alexa. And then I had screens up from like ChatGPT, Bard, and like Inflection Pi, like just so many different like AI systems. And I was like, you could hear me at like 2 a.m. talking to my Alexa and just like trying to figure out like what the current customer experience is. And I'm like, what would I like? And then I would like come up with these like test hypotheses and like try to validate it. So I just, that was like the customer obsession principles, like bias for action, like just showing that I'm not someone who just sits around and like waits for direction. Like I would come to every single meeting with a point of view. I would come to my manager with like, this is like what I've already drafted up. Like I want your help and perspective to take it from like great to even better. And at the end of the day, like I was super, super nervous. Like we don't get our team assignment. I didn't know I was on the Alexa AI team until 1 month before. And then and then she sent me some like machine learning stuff, and I was like, I have no idea what this is. So I was super nervous. I was like, I am not a very technical person, and I was very nervous that I was gonna not do all the internship. But I think at the end of the day, like Amazon kind of, or at least like from me succeeding in the internship and getting that incline vote to return, I think Amazon really values people who showcase their leadership principles and people who like put in the effort essentially. And like I walked out of that experience basically thinking like, hey, I did that. Like I was able to produce like a really, really incredible document. And I kind of have the mindset now that like you can put me in like anything and I can pick it up, and I can like I have those like innate qualities to produce something like really good. So really thankful for Amazon for giving me that like confidence. But yeah, it was like for anyone listening out there that's like never done an internship before or like is doing an internship in like a new area, it like you don't have to be scared. Like you just have to you have to work hard, and you have to like really show like ownership and like the ability to take feedback and apply it. And I think that's what I did, which led me to that like successful result.
That is awesome. That was such a beautiful story. And my main takeaway from this, you're built different, Tiff. Like the fact that you're able to adapt to so many different aspects of your job, of your culture, and really embrace Amazon's principles is mind-boggling, because it's so cool what you're able to achieve. So I think it's so inspiring, especially for like the younger generation, people coming before us who want to emulate your career, who want to emulate your basically going from UC school to UCLA to Salesforce to Amazon, to do so many amazing things with your life. So thank you so much for sharing this. I'm just so proud of you. And I don't know if you could tell the whole interview, I was just smiling. I was like, let's go, Tiff. Let's go. I feel like your number one fan, just cheering you on and just hearing. It was great. I kid you not. I kept my hands down here because they're starting to get a little bumpy from all the goosebumps. So no one could see like me kind of getting so excited for you, but very proud, very happy for you. And I do have one last question before we close off the interview. What is one last piece of advice you give to your younger self?
You know, when you like, when I was like texting you earlier, I was like, is there anything I should prep for? I saw that question. I was like, oh, this is going to be a hard one to answer. There's like so much to that I would like to tell my younger self. I think if I had to answer that question, like, I got this through my MBA, but I don't think it needs to be like a lesson that you pay $140,000 for. So I remember starting. So my first day of my last year of MBA, which was a few months ago, I remember posting like my like happy like last day, like first day of 19th grade, or like my last year of MBA. And my last line was like, I basically was like, UCLA Anderson's giving me like all these things, but the thing I'm most thankful for is UCLA giving me like the delusional confidence, self-confidence that I could do absolutely anything. And when I think back to like 20-year-old me, like 25-year-old me, even like a few years ago, I just wish I could tell myself like, you can absolutely do everything. There's no reason for you to like say no. Like I shouldn't count myself out for anything. And yes, like UCLA has helped me basically like validate that, because I feel like I keep trying hard, and luckily I keep kind of getting like rewarded for it and getting those results. But I think if I could tell my like 20-year-old self, like you can, like you shouldn't, especially as like a woman of color too, like you shouldn't count yourself out for anything. Like you do have the skill sets, you do, and if you don't, you can figure out how to do it. So yeah, I would tell my younger self, like, just go for it. Like you should be delusional. You should you should be delusional. Don't let anyone, or don't, especially yourself, let yourself like tell you can't do something.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love that you're saying you should be delusional. It's crazy just to see how much you've accomplished, right? That delusion that we're saying, it's all your dreams have all kind of become true and they continue to manifest into something even more beautiful. It's like I think I was watching the actor Beats. He was talking about how if you wait long enough, your delusions become true. All your dreams end up becoming true, and it's kind of started happening for you with UCLA, with the Wooden Fellowship Award, with Amazon, with Salesforce. And I'm so excited to see what you continue to do next. And your story is so inspiring. Like I said before, you're helping a lot of people sharing your story. And this is probably one of my favorite podcast episodes I've done. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So I appreciate you. You inspired me to just kind of like do a lot
Thanks,
more.
Angelo.
It means a lot. So thank you, Tiff.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Well, everyone, that is the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. It helps us get the algorithm going, helps us share Tiffany's experience and help a lot more people out. With that being said, Jello family, really appreciate you guys and have an amazing day. Peace.